Hello and welcome to the Hardison Cochran podcast. On today's episode, North Carolina workers' comp lawyer Ben Cochran is going to answer the question, does my employer have to hold my job while I'm out on workers' comp? Now, Ben Cochran.
If you're injured at work and a doctor takes you out of work so that you can't return back to your position at your employer, if you're out of work for longer than 7 days, you will begin to receive workers' compensation benefits. There's a grace period for the first 7 days, unless you're out of work for 21 days, and then you will receive that compensation for that first 7-day grace period. During that period of time, depending on the size of your employer, your position may or may not be held by your employer. If your employer is large enough to where they are required to follow FMLA, then your position must be held for 12 weeks if you appropriately fill out the paperwork. Ultimately, however, if you are out of work as a result of an on-the-job injury longer than 12 weeks pursuant to FMLA, or if your employer is not bound by FMLA, your position is not legally required to be held by your employer. That's a common misconception that people often think, well, I was injured on the job, my employer can't let me go. Unfortunately, that's just not the case.
Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and Hardison Cochran attorneys at law. Hardison Cochran does not accept new clients without first obtaining a signed agreement. The information shared in this podcast is for information purposes and should not be intended or taken as legal advice as to yours or anyone else's legal matter. If you have a legal matter, contact an attorney about your specific set of circumstances.